We are here this morning to talk about the attacks on public sector unions and the response that those unions have mounted. It is no secret that we are living in an age of austerity, guts to public services, guts to all kinds of gains that public sector unions have won since the 1970s. And we are joined today by two folks who are going to speak to us about what their unions have done in response to these attacks. The first speaker, Jen Johnson, teaches high school history in the Chicago public schools. Yeah, let's hear it for the public school teachers. All right. I myself am a product of the Chicago public school system. Jen Johnson, is the union rep for her school. She's a vice president of the Chicago Teachers Union and was a founding member of the Caucus of Rank and File Educators, also known as CORE. How many CORE members are here today? Yeah. CORE was elected less than 2 years ago to run the union in one of the toughest moments of its life because they know, well, just how tough it is. There are 92 change Chicago teachers at this conference today. 92. Wow, that's a lot. Jen got involved in CORE and in the union because she has strong opinions about what teaching and learning should look like. She knew that the teacher blaming so-called education reforms coming down from above are not what students need. Jen will tell us what's in the Chicago teachers' lesson plan for the next school year. Jen?
Good morning, everybody. This is a very awake crowd, so congrats on a Saturday, right? So my name is Jen Johnson, and I'm so proud to be speaking at the Labor Notes Conference. I have to say I'm a bit dumbfounded standing here in front of all of you who represent such labor experience and knowledge. I'm very humbled to be here at the age of 30, as if I have something to teach all of you. I hope I can give you a sense of what rank and file teachers in Chicago are up against and why our fight is also your fight. I do want to point to the dozens of Chicago Teachers Union members in attendance, most of whom are wearing our lovely red t-shirts, because it's their expertise that I will be drawing upon today. So thanks to all the other rank and filers out there. So who am I? I'm a born Michigander. My dad, Michigan, all right. My dad taught high school history for 34 years in Grand Rapids, Michigan. All right, and my grandfather taught high school English for 35 years in Winnetka, Illinois. That same grandfather took my mother on the last day of the Selma to Montgomery March in 1965, and my mother authored a book in 1970 about her experience being the only white student in an all-black public high school called Marshall on the west side of Chicago in 1966. So I knew from a very early age, A, that I wanted to be a history teacher, and B, that I wanted to work in public schools. End of story. I got my job at Lincoln Park High School in Chicago when I was 21, and I've been very lucky to work there ever since. My union activism started when my school's principal started to target union delegates for firing, as I was just getting involved in union work myself. My mentor teacher was let go. Then my union mentor, our librarian, was unjustly fired. I was untenured and scared. In the wake of those losses, I felt like I needed to do more, learn more, and shake off my fears. Luckily, I'd met another young teacher named Jackson Potter at a professional development, and just a little more than 4 years ago in 2008, he invited me to an electrical workers union hall to meet with some other teachers. Jackson and Al Ramirez, he's somewhere back there, deserve tons of credit because they made a little grassroots film about the injustices hurled on our schools by Mayor Daley and former CPS CEO Arne Duncan, now the current Secretary of Education for the United States. Yes, and after making this angry movie, they called together a group of ambitious educators to do something, and we had no idea what we were about to do. We discussed the conditions in our schools and the emergent pattern of school closings that were increasingly demoralizing our staffs and students. The mayor and the CEO of the school district had said that he was going to close 60 schools, those being neighborhood, public, and unionized, and then open 100 schools, those being mostly charter and non-union. This was all under a reform program called Renaissance 2010. Our students were suffering as they were shuffling around the city, and no new significant funding or resources were being invested in existing neighborhood schools. Our union members were losing their jobs, and those still in schools felt like their jobs were being deprofessionalized. Over the course of the next few months, we contacted more of our friends and colleagues, had meeting after meeting after meeting, and came up with the name CORE, the Caucus of Rank and File Educators. We developed a 5-point platform on the advice of the progressive former president of the British Columbia Teachers Union, Ginny Sims. We decided that CORE as a caucus, shout out to BC, yes. We decided that CORE would be a caucus that would be the voice of our union. We thought we needed to do that because we didn't feel like our union was. We wanted to advocate for publicly funded public education in a way that was responsive and driven by our union members, and develop partnerships with other unions, parents, and community organizations. We set out to accomplish these goals person by person and school by school. We had meeting after meeting, conversation after conversation, attended and sponsored event after event. We learned quickly in CORE that we weren't the only people feeling this way. We were not the only people who were feeling frustrated and ignored. Within a year, we had hundreds of members, and we held a forum at Malcolm X College in Chicago on the morning of one of the biggest blizzards in the last few years. We were scared no one was going to show up. 500 students, teachers, and parents. It was amazing. 500 people braved the storm just to get there so they could hear what we were talking about. We talked about defending public education. What I learned from this amazing and ever-widening network of educators in CORE, both current and retired, was that with time and effort, a true grassroots organization can be built quickly if it's responding to a real need. Our union leadership was not leading, and our schools were facing real and imminent attacks. We listened to our members. We made a monthly newsletter, distributed it to our members, passed out flyers at schools across the city, attended and invited people to our meetings to strategize, and importantly, attended every school board meeting, where we gave the mayor and his appointed, not elected school board a piece of our minds in curt 2-minute impassioned speeches that we knew would be broadcasted on local television that weekend. Most importantly, we protested, camped out, and spoke to the media with local school community groups that were fighting to keep open their neighborhood schools. CORE brought people and organizations together who wanted to improve public education. I don't say this lightly, but we did not organize CORE with the intention of leading the Chicago Teachers Union. We organized CORE to push our existing leadership in the direction of action and activism, which did happen, but to a limited degree. Once we realized that we had the capacity and the will, we decided we would run to take over the Chicago Teachers Union. By winning the election, we hoped to build a more fighting, social justice, activist union. We decided this at a moment when President Obama and his education secretary were ramping up the school's funding competition called Race to the Top. Yeah. And Davis Guggenheim was putting out his teacher and union bashing movie, Waiting for Superman. We also won leadership of the union just 2 years before our current 5-year collective bargaining agreement expired. So, we won leadership at a critical moment in our particular union's history, but also at a pivotal movement in the history of this country. As CORE, we met with teachers from Milwaukee, Los Angeles, New York, Detroit, Puerto Rico, British Columbia, and more. We knew and still know that we are not alone in this fight. We have to make sure neighborhood public schools are staffed by dedicated, unionized workers. We know that we are not the only ones. We are not the only ones facing this corporate onslaught. Here, we're facing charter schools funded by edupreneurs or politicians, forcing legislation backed by billionaires who want to credit themselves with being champions of education. We know we are not the only workers facing attacks on collective bargaining. Here in Illinois, we are squeezed between Republican attacks on unions from Wisconsin and Indiana. Unfortunately, we are facing similar attacks here from Democrats. Last year, the democratically controlled Illinois legislature and Democratic governor gave our new Democratic mayor, straight from Washington, D.C., the power to mandate a longer school day and a longer school year. Remember, Mayor Emanuel was elected Chicago's mayor by outspending his closest opponent 10-1. Rahm and his cronies in the state capitol got a law passed that said we, just the Chicago teachers, had to get 75% approval for a strike authorization. And now, they're afraid because we can get that 75%. So, thank you so much for your support. Let me give you some talking points, okay? So that you can talk to the public about why we need your support. So this mayor expects educators to work up to 6 additional weeks with no promise of additional pay. This is, in fact, a year after the Board of Education said they could not pay our existing contractually obligated raises. The state legislature has repeatedly attacked teacher pensions and lifted limits on the proliferation of non-union charter schools. Mayor Emanuel's appointed, not elected, school board members, nearly all millionaires, want a collective bargaining agreement gutted of details protecting work rules, without any explicit reference to how the workday is structured, that provides a 2% raise over 5 years but moves to merit pay, where teachers compete for a chunk of money based on student growth on tests, and a contract that eliminates increasing pay for additional training or degrees. Now, talking of pay and pension may seem like meat and potatoes, but these basic pay issues demonstrate a larger disrespect for public school educators and the schools they work in. What kind of teachers will stay in a system where they are paid more to work less? Organizations like Teach for America have popularized the notion that younger, cheaper, and inexperienced teachers will invigorate education, even though all research says experienced veteran teachers improve education and student outcomes. A recent study published by the Labor Studies Department at University of Illinois found that out of 1,000 surveyed CPS teachers, we work an average of 60 hours a week, but we're paid for about 30. I'm completely baffled by being asked to do more when I can barely keep up with all the mandated work it is I have to do now that I never can get done within my actual work hours. Teacher morale is at an all-time low. Tell me, what kind of schools will result from rushing these changes? Will students benefit with more time, with no planning, no funding, and no resources? No, we know this. I know my students feel ignored in this process as well. We rank and file educators are the experts, doing the work day in and day out, but our voices are labeled as greedy. We, CORE, in the leadership of the Chicago Teachers Union, have tried to change the parameters of this discussion. In February, we published the schools Chicago's students deserve. It's a well-researched study that puts the needs of our students first. Okay, and it says things like we should lower class sizes. We should fund arts and physical education and language. We should limit testing, which takes away from actual instructional time. And finally, the study ends with an actual plan on how to fund it, because it can be done. In closing, we know what we're up against, and we know how pivotal our struggle is. We know that workers in education and other trades and professions are looking to our fight for lessons and to see that we ultimately will succeed. We know our contract fight represents the struggles across the country trying to maintain the middle class. We are talking strike now. No educator wants to be on the picket line and have our students out of classes, but we will not lay down. We will not accept our rights and our students' rights being devalued. So, we're wearing our red shirts every Friday in our schools, we're holding mock elections and strike votes, and we're trying to see if we can get positive outcomes. So far, all of the schools that have had a mock strike vote have been above 80%, many of them 100%. And thankfully, we're not alone. The CORE leadership and the CTU have partners, all of the different workers in our schools representing engineers, lunchroom staff, teaching assistants, security staff, we're working together. We educators are supporting our transit workers, our police, our firefighters, our mental health workers, our nurses in their fights. Together, we are building the leverage that we need. So I say thank you. Thank you to all of you rank and file leaders alike. And will you stand with us? Because we're ready to stand with you.